Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is episode number 66, and I have had a great time getting warmed up here before the show with none other than Alyson Gerber. Alyson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Alyson is an author. She's got a book coming out here, which we're going to talk about, called Taking Up Space. It'll be in stores on May 18th. Is that correct?
That's right.
So yeah, I know you're excited about that. I know it's a little bit different with the with COVID going on in terms of the launch. We'll talk about that a little bit. But I came across Alyson's profile on Twitter, like I meet a lot of our guests. And she's not necessarily what I would say like an education. We're going to hear a little bit about her education and some thoughts she has on education, but the topics that she talks about in her books, I think, translate so well to educational leadership. And I think she's going to bring some things to the show that will, when you encounter these situations in your schools with your students, I think you're going to have a little bit different perspective on how to work with students who are going through some of these things. And I'm also excited just to hear about, we love personal growth on this show. Like, how did you become a writer? Like, how do you go about the process? What tips do you have for school leaders? So I'm talking a lot here, and I promised before the show I wouldn't. But Alyson, why don't you go ahead to share kind of your educational background, where you've been, how you got into writing, and then what you've been up to in terms of your books and what's coming.
Sounds great. I'm Alyson Gerber. I am the author of Focused, Braced, and my new novel is called Taking Up Space. All three of my books are middle grade novels, so I write for readers 8 to 12 and the adults in their lives. So parents, teachers, educators, grandparents, anybody that works with kids or lives with kids, these ages. There's a way into these books for you too, for the adults. My new book, Taking Up Space, which comes out on May 18th, is about 7th grade basketball player named Sarah, who is struggling to feel good about her body and herself. And it's based on my struggles overcoming body image, food, and self-worth. Did I say overcoming struggles with? I meant to say overcoming struggles with. I don't know that I did.
It sounded good to me. It sounded good on my end.
Okay. So this book is really important to me, obviously, because there's a personal aspect to it. My other books also have a personal aspect. Mm-hmm. I wrote Focus because I actually had undiagnosed ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder type 1 until I was 21. So I didn't know. I was basically fighting a battle every single day inside my brain, not knowing what was wrong, thinking that I was messing up and not understanding. And not really understanding that the implications of having ADHD aren't just in the classroom, that they extend to the rest of your life. ADHD impacts every part of a person's life, especially their interpersonal relationships. And I didn't quite understand that. And my problems really started when I was diagnosed with scoliosis at age 7. And I was followed until I got a back brace starting at 11, which I wore for 2.5 years from 11 to 13. Scoliosis is in my case, it was a genetic disorder. It can be genetic, it cannot be. There's not evidence medically to prove that yet. My mom also had scoliosis. She had one of the very first spinal fusions in the country. And my dad is an orthopedic surgeon. So there was sort of it was a family experience. Wow. And I wanted to give a voice to the experience of wearing a brace, the shame that comes along with having scoliosis, and the uncertainty that comes along with it, which I think in this moment in COVID is really relatable. I struggled in school. So my education was a rocky boat. Very, very rocky. I never really had anybody behind. I mean, I had other than my parents. My mom was a big advocate for reading and for books. And she made books very safe for me, even though I really didn't learn how to read until 3rd grade. She found a way somehow to make me feel like books were for me. And it's a very powerful force in my education. She also was a person advocating for me and fighting for me in school behind the scenes when I was really struggling to get by. I somehow made it to college And when I graduated from college, my brother, who's about 10 years younger, was in 7th grade, and he was diagnosed with ADHD around that time. And once I started to I knew people with ADHD. I had kids in my class. I understood. I knew that there was medicine that some people took, and I sort of had an idea of how that worked, but I didn't think that it had anything to do with me for lots of different reasons.
Mhm.
So when they started to explore this diagnosis for him and started to explain it to me, I realized that it was me and that I really needed to go and get tested. And so I did, and I was diagnosed. And that's when I started therapy and started unpacking all of the things that I had been through and all the experience that I had. And I realized, and writing became a form of therapy for me.
Mm.
So that's how I got here.
So when you went to okay, so when you went to college, what did you go to college for? Was it for some sort of writing, or was it totally something different?
I went to a liberal arts college, so you didn't have to decide on a major.
Okay.
I thought I was going to be a theater major. I was always really into theater. So storytelling was always a part of my life. Um, I added on the English major mostly because there was this great class that I took my first semester that
Mm.
was really interesting to me. It was just there was a really exciting professor who I really liked. The conversations were great. So I just kept taking English classes. And this is like the most ADHD story ever, but at the time, in order to fill out your majors and minors, you had to fill out this form with records and registration, and I get it signed by your advisor. And so I filled out the form, and I got it signed by my advisor, and I lost it. So I was supposed to be an English major with a theater minor, and I had done all the requirements. I actually done all the requirements for the theater major, but I didn't do one tech because it was just too overwhelming. And then I lost the slip, and so I never got credit for the theater minor, like ever. So
What?
it's like this sad, it's like it
Wow.
really does sort of showcase what it means to have ADHD, which is like to do all the work and
Oh,
like on the like to be working so hard, extra hard all the time through all these hurdles and then get no credit for it. And
oh
like be
man.
told like you did it wrong.
They didn't give you like another, I mean, just because that slip of paper was lost, then sorry, you're done. Like we don't.
It's like not there. It's like, yep,
Wow.
yep.
Wow. We
Because
always
they like
tell
didn't
these.
follow the rules, you know?
Sheesh. I mean, we always tell these stories about, oh, life, there's this perception like, oh, people say like, oh, you can't give kids second chances. You can't. And then we tell these stories to our teachers that are like, life is full of second chances. Like, don't worry, there's always, you can turn your taxes in late. You can do but that was like a one-shot deal. That is crazy.
I
Oh,
mean,
I would be
I will say,
devastated.
like, you also have to sometimes make other chances for yourself. Like,
Sure.
there's a lot to be said for appropriately speaking up for yourself and advocating for the things you do.
Sure.
And this was like at the time, there was so much else wrong and so many other problems that this was the least important thing.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and so there were a lot of other things to be solved. Now looking back on it, I can say like, oh, that is an example of where my
So,
life was.
okay. So at 21ish or
Mhm.
whatever, you
Mhm.
get this diagnosis, you're starting some therapy. You've been how long had you been kind of journaling for and writing for? Had this
So
been,
I hadn't been.
oh,
I took
okay.
in college, I was an English major, but I studied the English novel, I studied the canon. I didn't study creative writing. I took one creative writing class, which I enjoyed. But I just didn't I I didn't think it was for me.
Mm.
I never had anybody say them. I was a great writer. I never had anybody encourage me to write or express myself with writing. So I just didn't think I was very good at it. And so I never really did it. But
Wow.
I mean, like I said, books had been made, um, you know, I felt like books for me. So reading was not an issue. And I liked to read.
So your first book was Braced,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
So how did at what point did that, after you started journaling and you found it as a way to kind of form of therapy, it sounded
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
how did that turn into, I'm going to write this book for kids, middle grade books for kids.
It's
So,
a great question. So, right around the time I started therapy, I I was working in a job at an after school program where we were writing curriculum for 3rd to 6th graders, which is really interesting because that's the age of my readers now. Just by chance, it worked out that way. So I walked into therapy one day and I said, we're allowed to take an extracurricular class, like the job would pay for it. And so I looked through the non-credit courses that fit into the budget that was given to me. And one was called Writing for Magazines and Newspapers with Susan Shapiro. And I said, well, that sounds kind of interesting to me. And so my therapist said, well, you should do it. You should try it. I think that would be really good for you. And so the very first assignment that Sue gives in her Writing for Magazines and Newspapers class, which she still has, but in a different form now. So if anybody's interested in taking it, I highly recommend it. So the very first essay is usually what Sue calls the humiliation essay. So to write about the most humiliating thing that has ever happened to you. And a lot of times from that humiliation essay, people will sell personal essays to magazines and newspapers. And so I wrote about, and I'm not sure what, I've been thinking a lot about, like, how did I find it in myself to know that this was the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me? But I wrote about being 11 and just having started going through puberty and standing in a room at a teaching hospital with 15 male orthopedic surgeons looking at my naked body, talking about how there was something wrong with me and how that felt.
Wow.
And it had never occurred to me, like, what a huge impact that had on, and having like a parent in the room. So, and let's be fair and let's be honest, my mom had her own trauma with her scoliosis experience. So this was normal to her. This was her normal. And this happens a lot, right? We pass things down to our kids. We pass down our own normal in all different kinds of ways. And now talking about it, we talk about it all the time now. And what's really amazing is that writing Brace and the process of writing Brace, which was an incredibly emotional experience, as you can imagine, deeply triggering. There was a lot of crying. Really actually opened up this dialogue between me and my mom. And we've been able to talk about things that, she's never thought about and that I had never thought about. And now that I have my own daughter who will have to be monitored for scoliosis and followed, I mean, when I tell you she's 3.5 and I'm already thinking about it because it's 5 years away, I think about it a lot. It's definitely on my mind. It's a big part of why I do advocacy for girls with scoliosis, because it is an experience that breaks you. And it's hard. You have to really educate yourself on how to make sure that doesn't happen. Um,
I think I saw it on your website, or I saw it at, like, a preview of Brace, like up to around 10% of student or of is it
Kids,
all
yeah.
student of kids have scoliosis, which, I mean, maybe I don't know enough about it. Like, are there different levels of how much it affects kids? Is there something as educational leaders we should be looking for? I don't even know if we do scoliosis checks anymore. I know we used to,
Totally.
but I wasn't. So
It's
share
usually
what should we know?
It's
What should we
usually
know?
a state requirement. So, I mean, it's per
Okay.
state. So like some states require it and some states don't. And it just is, it's fairly arbitrary, to be honest. The National Scoliosis Association website has a map of which states require monitoring and which states don't. My guess is that you probably don't. If it's not happening every single year, you probably don't. So the reason why they used to monitor, and they still should be monitoring kids in middle school, is because that's when kids are going through growth spurts. So the kind of scoliosis we're talking about is idiopathic. So idiopathic is a medical term, which means unknown. So there's different kinds of scoliosis, but idiopathic scoliosis is the one that is sort of the 10% of kids. And there's no reason. It usually happens in healthy children, and it does happen to different degrees. The reason somebody might have to be followed is if they have a family history, if the curve is progressing or they're growing really, rapidly, they'd want to be monitored. Their pediatrician would refer them to an orthopedic surgeon to monitor the scoliosis to make sure that the curve, which is either curving into an S or a C as they grow, isn't beginning to cause damage to their internal organs, and also it can be it might not be uncomfortable at a young age. Like I have a 30-degree curve in my spine. Even now, the brace doesn't fix this curve. So it just
Okay.
holds it in place as you grow. So I still have a 30-degree curve. And when I was 12, 11, that curve didn't bother me. But now that I am in my 30s, that curve has a big impact on my
Mm,
comfort. It has a big impact on what I can do. And I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself in taking care of my scoliosis, because otherwise it's very painful. Um, Even with having had the brace. Now, the biggest sort of hurdle is that once you get to a certain degree, and that can depend on your situation, then it makes sense to have a spinal fusion, and the earlier you have that, the better. And the reason they like to have that early is because there are complications when you have the surgery after a certain age and after you're done growing.
hmm.
So it's super important to monitor kids within this growth period.
Okay. Okay.
And that's something that can be done at the pediatrician's office as well.
Well, I just looked it up. I'm embarrassed. We have screening in
Oh,
Iowa.
good. Oh, I'm so glad.
I
That's
don't know.
great.
There's some of these things I don't hear. It is at the 6th grade level, is what it
Yeah, that makes
says.
sense.
So I mean, but I mean, there's a lot of more and more families in public schools are low income families. They get this report that maybe their kid has scoliosis, and they don't, that I don't know if they do anything about it. I could be wrong. I don't know if there's something they have to do, but
Well, it's
uh,
just I mean, everybody has to go to the pediatrician for shots, or go to some sort of, even to a clinic,
yeah.
to get certain things for school, like an evaluate. I don't know what has to be submitted to the public school.
Mhm.
But that whoever does that evaluation can also, if they get a report like this, can make sure. Also, another great resource is Shriners, which offers
Sure.
free services. So
Okay.
Shriners has been amazing for so many different kinds of families, for all different kinds of reasons. But Shriners is a great resource that I highly recommend.
Okay. Okay.
Another resource I would recommend is Curvy Girls Scoliosis Foundation. It's a network of peer support groups that's run worldwide. And one of the things that I hope readers of Braced will come to see is that this experience is very emotional, and very, it really impacts your mental health. And so having support from people who are going through the same thing, and also having parents have the opportunity to have support from other parents going through something similar, is really helpful.
So you wrote Braced, and then how much longer? So your second book was Focused. How many years? I mean, when you got done with your first book, what was that feeling like? Were you like, okay, I'm ready to write another one? Or were you like, oh, I am just so exhausted. What was that reaction? And then how did you shift to Focused with your battles? Maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but those battles with ADHD.
So after I took that class with Susan Shapiro, and I wrote the humiliation essay, it took me a while to realize that I wanted to write a book. And it took me a long time. And I ended up going and getting a master's in fine arts at the New School, and it's specifically in writing for children and teens. After that program, that's when I started to write Braced, and query agents. And eventually I did a revision with Cheryl Klein, who was an editor at Scholastic, who also wore a back brace for 6 years. So it was a
Oh,
very collaborative process. Before Brace came out, I actually sold Focused and Taking Up Space. Well, it was a no name. There was like, I sold a 2-book deal to Scholastic, um, which I was very excited and happy
okay.
and terrified to sign that contract, but like so excited. And so when Brace came out, I had no idea what I was getting into. I mean, I didn't know as a debut author what it would be like, especially a debut author of a book that was so personal.
Mhm.
And it was, I have to say, even now, I have never felt so seen and heard and validated for everything I went through. I spent most of my life really hating myself and not valuing myself and thinking that I was worthless for
Hmm.
all. And I came from a home where you would be shocked to know this. Like, from the outside, we looked like a perfect family. Everything was wonderful. I mean, truly, and I say this with so much thanks and gratitude, I had so much privilege, and so many things, so many advantages. And yet I was my mental health was deteriorating so quickly. I I was not going to make it very much longer. I was in a really bad place. I had no self-esteem.
Mm,
I was in a constant state of negative self-talk. I mean,
mm,
constant. And everything that happened in my life was just because of my undiagnosed ADHD was reinforcement of this negative sense of self. It was like proof that I was horrible because I would mess things up. One day I could do it, the next day I couldn't. See, I'm the worst. And one of the things that people don't realize about ADHD, and there's a lot of push to say like, oh, we don't want to diagnose our child. One of
mhm,
the things people don't realize is that when you don't diagnose and you don't give that label and you don't get information about who you are and how you see the world and how you learn, then you just go through the world, which is not built for somebody like me, not built for somebody with a disability,
mhm,
sort of stumbling all the time and thinking that there's just something wrong with you, when really there's kind of something wrong with the world, that it's just built for one kind of person.
mhm,
Um, and so writing Brace gave me sort of the validation and the strength and the sense of self, and hearing from people like, your voice has made such a difference. I can't, like, you've changed my life. Like, this book has changed my life. To hear that just made me want to be more honest and be more open. So when I went to write Focused, I really walked into that book like ready to talk about ADHD, which I think ultimately, I mean, destroyed me.
mm.
And again, to be very, very fair to my parents, my mom drove me to Yale to be tested by the person who did the original ADHD studies. And it was never brought up because it was only boys. When I at the time, it was
Wow.
many moons ago.
Okay.
So it never came up as as something that could have been going on.
Wow.
And then because I went to a tutor who really tortured me. I mean, she tormented me.
Sheesh.
And she taught me how to cope, and I was really smart and really capable and really dedicated to succeeding. I wanted to succeed more than anything.
Mhm,
And so I learned a lot of coping skills that really helped me to get through school. But each step of the way, I was really it was self-harm
mm,
without realizing what was happening. And also um, adult, like, advocated for self-harm, because it was like this tutor who was supposed to be this educational resource recommended by the psychologist. This
wow.
person was supposed to help me, this had grown up in my life, who I knew in my heart was not kind. I knew that something was not right about this because I didn't have any other adults in my life like this. But I just assumed that all adults were in charge and that all adults had the answers. And so part of the thing that I really try to show in my books is that not all adults have the answers. And so one adult you go to might say one thing and another adult might say another thing. And so if you get a no, or you get somebody who treats you poorly, like, you're probably right. And so you should go talk to another adult, because that person maybe can hear you
Mm,
and help you advocate. And I think that's actually, as adults, sometimes as an adult, now a parent, I can understand why we might hesitate to teach our kids that the person in charge and the authority figure can be wrong sometimes, but it's okay to be wrong sometimes. We
mm,
need to be called out because
mhm.
sometimes we are wrong, and that's all right.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the kind of the same question about ADHD as I did with scoliosis.
Sure.
A lot of leaders probably haven't dealt with ADHD themselves, and so they're
Yeah.
not sure how to go about it. A lot of times, even you mentioned when you were going through school, like a lot of it went undiagnosed. I
Mhm.
feel like now we maybe even jump at times to maybe over diagnosing. I don't know enough about it, but
I'll
we
just jump in there and say never with girls. Girls are discriminated
that's
against
a good point.
time after time after time. Girls are underdiagnosed. Most people are underdiagnosed, but girls especially.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So and again, I've seen it too often where there are parents who are not doing what your parents did in terms of like,
Yeah.
let's go to Yale and let's go get this, that, like parents are like just hey, the school can take care of it. So as leaders, like what should we be looking for? And I'm even going to get specific with girls, with,
Mhm.
girls who are not going diagnosed, and maybe they're not as rambunctious as the boys who
That's
are.
right. So a big part of the problem actually starts in the medicine. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
The study that was originally done for ADHD was based on a control group of all male white kids.
Hmm.
So the symptoms that are written in the DSM are, those are the kind of symptoms um, that you'll see in white boys with ADHD.
Sure.
Um, Now, some of that has been revised, but it needs to be revised more because there are so many girls falling through the cracks because girls are socialized to be good and sit in their chair and behave themselves. And there's a societal pressure on, I mean, I see it in my daughter. I see what happens when she's not under my, I see what people say to her, be a good girl. I would never say that to her, but and I try to work really hard to fight against that. But we're so socialized to want to people please and want that and we're also socialized to take our pain and put it inside and really hold on to it so no one can see. Don't let anybody see. They'll think there's something wrong with you. And we really need to work as a society to fight against that, especially educators who, to be fair, educators are super overworked right now. And happy Teacher Appreciation Week. You guys are
Oh, thanks.
amazing, amazing. And so the kids who are disruptive to class are obviously going to get noticed. But one thing I think okay, first of all, I'll say this about all my books. The best thing that educators can do to help kids with scoliosis, with ADHD, and with any kind of food or body image issues, which by the way is 50% of kids. That means half of the kids that you teach are struggling with food and body image. And those statistics are so old. They're from before social media. So you can imagine that the numbers are more like the study from 2008, which talks about disordered eating in women. There was a survey done and it concluded that it was 75% of women with disordered eating behaviors. So, and that was from 2008. So that's a really long time ago in the world of how social media has changed the way that we view ourselves and the way that we value ourselves. So basically every teacher in the whole world, every parent in the whole world, please, please, please take the time to read Taking Up Space, Focused, and Braced. Do it for the kids who are quietly just melting away in the corner like I was, trying hard. The kid who is trying hard, but sometimes seems like they're not trying hard and they're trying to get themselves in trouble. Do it for the kid who you have no idea just needs somebody else in their life to help them because food issues are passed down from generation to generation. And do it for yourself because then you can see if you're struggling to feel good about yourself and your body and your relationship with food. It will help you to unpack that. And you don't have to have all the answers for all these things. Nobody thinks you need that. And I certainly don't. And I write my books really to make sure that the adults have a way into the story and that they leave with tools to be supportive of of kids, of all kids, and that kids who get it and are going through it get new tools, but also so their friends do. One of the things that I found very discouraging when I started writing was that there was this sense of like, this book is about scoliosis and it's for kids with scoliosis. And I was like, no, those kids, I mean, yes, it's for them. Of course it's for them. But like everybody needs to read it so they can be good friends to kids with scoliosis, have empathy and put themselves in that position.
Well, if people who've listened to this show before know I'm a really big nonfiction reader
Yeah.
and I've always not given much time to fiction, but the way you're describing it, there's a lot of nonfiction books out there that are like fables where they've kind of got a story it's kind of a made up story, but it's got like real world lessons.
Yeah.
What you're describing there sounds like awesome. And you and I, before the show, I talked Brad up in Minnesota. Brad, he's been reading a lot of children's books. Not only to understand what his children are reading, but also, with his kids, because he's the elementary principal, but also for him to do some, reflecting on his childhood and everything. So you're really doing a good job of selling to
Thank
me,
you.
not only your books, but just really like some of those books that have that extra message behind them, which it sounds like yours do. of all the three topics, scoliosis, ADHD, the body image issues, the third one, the one that's coming up, taking up space, really interests me probably the most, because I've talked on this show and I write about dieting, and I write about, just any, I kind of I thought, I hope this is okay. That I'm sharing this, but on a podcast a couple months ago, I did an episode that was called "I Don't Want a Dad Bod." So I don't know if that's like, maybe that's against what your thoughts are, but tell me about, maybe I want to hear a little bit more about your body image issues and this basketball. Maybe that was you, the basketball player, or whatever. I just want to hear more about that, and then let's talk about the book a little bit.
Sure, I would love to. So that's actually one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, is that I feel like there is a lot of misinformation out there about what does it mean to take care of yourself? What does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to value yourself and feel that you have self-worth? And so Taking Up Space is really a book about this girl who's a basketball player who is just struggling because basketball is her identity. It's how she views herself. And as she starts to go through puberty, basketball is changing and her body is changing, and some of the things that are happening on the court are changing. And that happens to a lot of kids, of all genders, really. There are different kinds of growth spurts, different things happen to your body, and it impacts how you play a sport and how you view yourself. And so Sarah also has a mom who is struggling and on her own journey with food and self-worth. And her relationship with food is really complicated. And so there's not very much food in their house. And it makes Sarah feel like nobody loves her. Food is a way that we show love. It's the way that we, in our society, it's a way that we have traditions, we share, we celebrate. It connects family, it connects generations. It's a really important part of who we are as a people, and it means more than just fuel. And at the same time, Sarah's dad doesn't really notice what's going on with the mom. He's traveling a lot for work. He doesn't really get that it's a big deal. And so I wrote these two characters into the book because I wanted adults who on their own struggle, and also adults who don't really get it and don't really want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable and weird and like, what's the big deal? It's just a diet. To have a way into the story and to understand what an impact Sarah's relationship with food and her body is having on her mental and her physical health, and why, even though she does not have an eating disorder, so this book is not about a girl with an eating disorder. It's a book about a girl who has something called disordered eating, which is, we mentioned before, is very, very common. It's a preoccupation with food, weight and body, compulsive dieting, very sort of what we think of as normalized and very normal diet culture, part of our society, part of our societal expectations. Sarah is struggling with disordered eating. And I really wrote this book because I wanted to show what an impact disordered eating, a complicated relationship with food and body, can have on your mental and physical health, and how kids who are struggling with these things also deserve help. So ultimately, for me, this book is the takeaway of this book is that you matter. And if you're in pain, even if there's not a label, even if there's not a real problem, meaning a medical problem, a diagnosable condition, illness, disorder, you still deserve to get help, and everybody deserves to get the help they need. I think it's really important. I think it's also really important for adults and kids to consider and to talk about, to have open conversations about how maybe we're labeling food, and maybe we're saying there are good foods and there are bad foods, and we're putting a value on it. We're making value judgments about in this way that makes food very complicated. And how can we take that language out and listen to our bodies more? And to help all of us, really.
So I know you saw my questions ahead of time, and I know you
Mhm.
liked one of the ones I was going to finish with. I'm going to ask you a very similar question,
Yeah.
talking about the self-image stuff.
Mhm.
Let's wait, Allison. Let's pretend we wake up tomorrow and you're suddenly in charge of our school. Okay, you are the principal of exactly the grade levels that you write to. Okay, so
Yep.
it's that ages 8 through 12, right? How would you go about addressing the body image issue? If we know that up to 75% pre social media of females, especially, but males as well, have these body image issues, like if you were in our shoes, what would you recommend?
Everybody should read Taking Up Space. Everybody. Every
Good
adult in
answer.
the
Good answer.
every adult in the building, every kid in the building, you can
Uh,
do a read out loud. I'll read aloud, start with the first chapter. Just start there. Start talking about what is happening in this book. It really gives you a chance to talk about it, to evaluate how we're living as a society, what we can do now to help ourselves, what we can work toward doing, how we can help each other, how we can be more supportive. That's what I would.
That was a great answer. And I promise you, I did not like this was not a paid like question just to lay it up there for you. How about this then too? What would you do? You're probably what you grew up with for your food program for the lunches that were served is exactly what we have going on right now. Would you change the food program or how would that look different under your leadership?
That's a very difficult question because I don't know the food program so well. But I would
It still
really,
looks the same as what you had, I bet.
okay, so I would really take the time to work with a medical professional trained by Health at Every Size. So Health at Every Size is an organization that does specific
Okay.
training. You can get a certification in Health at Every Size. Um, and I think that that is a really helpful way to evaluate um, the nutrition and food
Mhm.
services program within the health curriculum. I think that would be my starting point. I would start with a Health at Every Size certified professional
Okay.
to help create a more inclusive educational program. And then I would also consult with somebody who's trained within intuitive eating. I think those are two great resources, intuitive eating and Health at Every Size, that could really help to break the cycle. And I also think it's really important and could be really beneficial to bring families into the conversation. So if you're going to break open the system and you're going to just change everything, then I would also invite parents to come read Taking Up Space and discuss with these mental health and health professionals how we can just stop the cycle. That's my dream.
If I'm walking around and a lot of especially elementary middle level principals kind of part of their duties are to kind of walk through cafeterias while kids are eating lunch or breakfast. What's uh what is something that if we see a student is acting in a certain way, is there like an indicator this student might be having already at a young age some body image issues or some eating issues? Is there something to look for?
It's a really tricky question. I don't know if I can answer that specifically. What I can say is that if you do think that there's a student who's struggling, whether it's with food trauma, like there's access to food at home is a problem, whether you get some sort of indication like that, or that they are participating in disordered eating behaviors, there's something that feels out of the norm, that feels potentially very destructive, even if it's very, very, very small, um, then I would absolutely find a resource for that student in a private, non-shameful, non-accusatory way. Um, opening up the opening up a dialogue to say, like, I just wanted to check in with you and see if you want to talk about how you're feeling.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think you even have to say what you noticed. I think you can use your judgment. I don't think what an adult notices is really necessarily the most important thing. There's probably something even more important.
Hmm.
I think this is a really good segue into a point that I think is really important. We are all having a lot of feelings right now. Like, this is a pandemic and people are really impacted. kids are really impacted. And I think opening up the floor to give kids space to not be okay, and also to not solve all their problems. Like that's not your responsibility, not to solve, to be like the savior and world's fixture. Your responsibility is to give kids space to have feelings and to be, and to say like, here is a resource. There's a school counselor that you can contact. I hope you will. Like these are the office hours or whatever is available. Making those things available, even in a virtual setting, is really important, and giving kids space to just express themselves, which is really hard for adults to do.
I'm gonna kind of shift gears a little bit here.
Yeah.
And you saw my question about your favorite book. Of the 3 you've written, what's your favorite?
That is so hard. That's like picking your favorite kid. I love them all. But right now, I am so excited about Taking Up Space. I'm so excited about how it could, like, even this conversation, how it could potentially really change things. I mean, we need to ignite a multi-generational dialogue. We're too far gone at this point. We have to talk about it. It's been so uncomfortable for so long to talk about food and body image and societal expectations. It's like the thing we talk around. So we just have to talk about it. And this book is going to make people talk about it. It's going to make them think about it and talk to their kids about it.
So you've talked about 3 different topics. Do you have a fourth in mind for a fourth book of a fourth thing that you struggled with that you're going to be able to talk about?
I'm working on something, but it's a very top secret, so I
Okay.
can't say what it is, but it's a really good.
Okay. So after I asked that, I'm like, you probably can't share at this point. I haven't quite learned, how.
No,
there's
sometimes you
secret
can.
things.
Sometimes you can. This is super top secret, but it is awesome.
Okay. So I'm getting what I almost always do on the show is I buy the book when I'm like interviewing them. So do you recommend on Amazon or can I get it?
Oh, let's buy from your local bookstore.
Okay.
Do you have a local bookstore in Des Moines that you love? Well, if not, you could also buy it on bookshop.org, which supports local bookstores, but it's better to,
You've convinced. Okay. Well, I'll be, I'm an hour away from Des Moines, so I'm not super close. So I usually this sounds bad. I don't know if this is as bad as Amazon, but I go to Barnes and Noble when I'm there.
Barnes and Noble's.
Okay. So that's
a great option.
Okay.
I'm gonna find your local bookstore though. Let's support them.
Okay,
let's support small businesses.
Okay, I will go. You tell me where to go, and I will go get it because I think this would be a great thing to read about. Like I said,
amazing.
I have done a lot of writing and reading about physical fitness in terms of, probably a little too much on the strict side, which I've experienced some kind of like mental, like I'm craving this food and I can't do it. And, all those things. And then you gorge and then you feel sick. And so I'm interested to read it. So I will check that out.
Good. I'm so glad you said that and you shared that, because I feel like there are probably a lot of people listening who are like thinking the same thing and thinking like, I don't want to read this book. It's kind of uncomfortable. Like I've sometimes participated in restricting and binging. And I'm not a role model, so I certainly can't talk to kids about this. Like nobody's a role model.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to not be, it's okay to have like messed it up and ruined it and made all kinds of mistakes. Like this, there's no time like the present to say like, I matter and every kid in my life matters. And I'm going to matter most by doing the thing that helps me take care of myself, which is getting rid of diet culture from my life.
Gosh. Okay. Oh, there's so many. I've written down like 4 questions here. So, okay. Getting rid of this diet culture. I've got a question. Well, you have to market your books on, I want to talk about social media.
Okay.
Because I go to Instagram and all I see as I scroll through are like fitness models and everybody's looking their best and you've got to market your books on all these different platforms. You do a really good job of it. I've seen you on Facebook. I've seen you on Twitter. I don't know if on Instagram or not, but how do you approach social media?
So one of the things I've actively done in the process of writing this book is that I've gotten rid of anything that makes me feel bad. So if there is an account that I used to follow that makes I can tell they're distorting images, that the push is really for that they're pushing fat phobia, which is it's everywhere, and we need to stop it. We need to stop discriminating against people based on their size and shape. Anything that comes up like that, I get rid of it immediately. So like not blocked, but like I don't need that on my feed. I never go to the home screen of Instagram because I find that they will give me things that I don't want to see. So I follow the people who are positive, who are and not toxic positivity, because there's something to be said for like, you should be happy. Like, I'm not always happy. I'm mostly not happy. I have so many feelings. Follow me on Instagram. You'll see how many feelings I have all the time about everything. And like, that's living, is like being on this roller coaster. I mean, it's certainly living with ADHD is like being on a roller coaster of unfiltered emotions. So one of the things I recommend is make sure that your feed is filled with people who you care about and people whose messages are making you feel good. If something makes you feel bad, get rid of it. Like, you don't need that in your life, or get off. I have to be there for my job. So I try to create the world that I want to live in.
I like it. I like that. Now, do you have all the apps on your phone? Do you do anything different? Do you some people
I
like,
do.
okay.
I have them all on my phone because I'm like, sometimes I need to do something on my phone, and it's sort of annoying to not have the, I have them on my phone, but I'm not like I put my phone away. I'm not a constant. Yeah. I think it's really important to take time for your mental health away from stuff like this. I mean, my work does that for me because you can't write a book and also be on social media every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So, I have to say, like, today's the day I'm shutting down my internet, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to like soft music or whatever. And, right. So that sort of is a natural part of my job. But if it's not a natural part of your job, then you need to create space for yourself. You need to think.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hard to think. There's a lot of stimulation.
So before, I feel like there's a few questions I
Okay.
definitely want to ask you about your writing habits, how you set that up. Before we get into that, I feel like I need to ask you the question that we both talked about. Like, if you were a school principal for a day, we're going to bring you back in the school principal's office.
I'm ready.
And suddenly you're going to be in charge of writing and reading for those kids that you are writing to, 8 to 12 years old. Okay.
I'm ready.
And you can blow up the system and remake it whatever you want. What would you do? What would it look like in Alyson Gerber's school?
Alyson Gerber world?
Yeah.
There would be no leveled reading. It would be blown up and thrown away and gone forever. Leveled reading makes no sense. It would be choice reading. Kids could read based on what they're interested in, what stories engage them. They could read graphic novels. They could listen to there was just a fly that went by. They could listen to audiobooks. There's all different kinds of ways to read and engage in reading. And one of the things I find is when I'm in a reading rut is that I often will start listening to an audiobook because it reminds me what it feels like to be engaged in a story. And sometimes you just need that reminder. Or for a student who has never been a reader, they need a way in. And so a lot of times audiobooks can be a way in. I mean, certainly anytime I've had a rut, that's the first thing I do. I also love graphic novels. In fact, because I struggled to read so much, my mom, before this was sort of in fashion, she just believed in choice reading. I don't know where she came up with this concept, but I think part of it was that she bought all of her own books growing up because they didn't have a lot of money. And so when she started working, she would go to the store and pick the books she wanted because she was buying them. I think she sort of naturally understood choice reading as a way to engage readers. And I think we would go to the library and there was no book was ever put down. A book is a book. You read a book, great, whatever book it was. Before there was so much access to amazing graphic novels like there are now, I always was a very visual learner. And in fact, reading a graphic novel is much harder than reading a novel like I write, because you're looking at pictures of people talking to each other or animals talking to each other. And so you're evaluating body language and what's happening in the scene as well as the words. You're doing two things at once. So she would get me a lot of comics because I loved comics. I loved the graphic novel format, and it was a way in for me. So then, I would get warmed up, and then I would say like, oh, I think I'm going to read The Babysitter's Club, or I think I'm going to read, and then I'd be more interested in reading and more interested in looking for stories that were engaging, and it turned me into a lifelong reader. So that's the way to make lifelong readers. Let kids read exactly what they want. You never say a bad word about the books they want, and you know what? Even read them along with them.
I like that.
Validate them, show them that they are worth being the main character in your story too.
Mm. What about on the writing side? What would you recommend for writing at that age?
So I think there are a lot of different ways to teach writing. A lot of people have very smart, amazing things to say about it. Um, I feel that oftentimes writing can sort of be presented in a very academic way in school. That's how it was for me. And there's like a right and a wrong and a yes and a no. And I was made to feel like a no a lot. And so I think that writing prompts that really allow kids to be themselves on the page and can show them that there's all different ways to tell stories and there's not a right way and there's not a right answer, could be a really inspiring way to teach writing, like to provide prompts that really reach each kid where they are, and what they're interested in, the same way that we should be encouraging kids to read what makes them what they're interested in. We should be encouraging kids to write about what they're interested in. Like, I guess I didn't even put together that writing was telling stories because it was never presented that way to me.
Hmm. I just can't believe that nobody, I mean, I'm just looking at like all of your Goodreads reviews. And I mean, you've got some really hot books.
Thank you.
I just can't believe nobody said to you, hey, you're a talented writer. Is that correct? Is that, you said that earlier, correct?
Yeah, I mean, nobody. I mean, not when I was younger, never. I never heard
Yeah.
that. I never even thought, I mean, I never thought of myself as a writer. I mean, until I started to say, like, I want to be a writer. I want to write books. And even then, it took me a while to really take myself seriously as a writer because I don't know, because nobody had ever, I'd never been validated in that way that,
Mhm.
um, yeah.
Oh, that's
When I
cool.
got my first starred review, I just remember it was like a Kirkus starred review. And I just remember sobbing. Like I like sat there sobbing for hours because I was like, oh my gosh, they think I'm good. Like people are actually going to read my
Huh.
book, which is just not, I mean, I never really, I really hadn't thought that that was possible for me. And I
Yeah.
think it changed, I mean, the whole process of publishing Braced really changed the way that I saw myself.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. I wish we had more time. I mean, like I would probably ask you 5 more questions about all of this, but I feel like I want to go on to some of these personal growth,
Totally.
these ideas that you could share with us, because these are always fascinating. And some of my questions are kind of following in here. So if you are joining us late, this is episode 66 with Alyson Gerber. She's got a book coming out in a couple weeks called Taking Up Space. She's won all kinds of awards. Okay. I forgot to mention this earlier. So your book Focused was picked as one of the best books of the year on the Today Show.
Yes, it was.
That's crazy. So I meant to ask you earlier, what has been, you mentioned getting that starred review. The Today Show identified your book as one of the best of the year. What's been your highlight? If you could say, okay, what's been the best moment so far of my adult, whatever, professional career, what would that be?
I don't know. I mean, it was it. I don't know. I mean, every moment of this experience has been, there's ups and downs, but I feel I feel like I've received a lot of amazing acclaim and amazing praise. And I feel very lucky. I think, getting picked for the Today Show was also in part because Jerry Craft, who, as you may or may not know, wrote New Kid, which won the Newbery, is read Focused and appreciated it and saw it as an important book, and he was asked to select his pick, and he picked my book, and it meant a lot to me because New Kid actually is a book that really changed me as a reader. It's a graphic novel and it is such a powerful and important story, and I wrote to him after I read it because I really saw myself in one of the characters, and I wanted him to know what I had taken away from the book and how I thought it would have impacted me as a kid. And we, chatted a little bit, and I really value him. I value his work and I value his opinion. And so to sort of be selected as his pick and have my book be seen by somebody whose work I admire so much was really incredible. really incredible experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at his book. I know a lot of
His book's
nonfiction books.
amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
another
looking
all
at it. It
school
looks
read.
awesome. I think
That's
kids would
another all
love
school read
this.
for
Love
sure.
this. All right, let's keep going here. Now okay, we're gonna, like I said, these are a little bit more quick hitters here. Can I get you for about 15 more minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we will try to burn through these here. So you live in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
right? You live in Brooklyn. Where's this is good. I mean, the biggest city in the United States, but where's you're probably gonna be like, oh my God, where do I even start? But the question is, where's one place we got to check out if we're in your neighborhood? If we're in your neighborhood, where do we got to check out?
Okay, well, this great place just opened called Pasta Louise, and they make homemade pasta, and it's fantastic. And they're really child friendly. And they have homemade ice cream,
Oh,
and they're not too far from me. So we go there a lot. It's brand new. There's also this place down the street called Winner, which is a lot of amazing sort of not non-recognized chefs and bakers who put this establishment together, and they sell the best homemade bread ever. It's all like sourdough based. It's very good. There's like a huge line around the door. So
okay.
Winner and Pasta Louise.
Oh, those of you in big cities, we have good food here. Don't get me wrong, but like, there's so many good options of food in large cities. I was in Nashville 2 weekends ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then New York's times 100, so okay, well, I appreciate you sharing those things. What is one sneaky good purchase you have made that has most improved your life?
Ooh, that's a hard question. Oh, I know. I know the answer actually. I bought a fancy desk chair. Um, and this was about 6 months ago. And it has made my back. I really was like, these ergonomic chairs are so expensive
Yeah.
and not that cute. Why do I want this?
No.
But it has made such a difference.
Huh.
Really, I'm not in nearly as much pain as I was before. I should have prioritized it a long time ago, considering my chronic back pain. But I'm glad I did.
Huh. That's awesome. It's not the chair you're sitting in right now. Is that
No,
correct?
it's
No.
not. It's
Okay.
not. No.
Okay. Gotcha. You gotta look good for the camera there with the
This chair is pretty comfortable, but it's not. It's like a lean back and hang out chair.
sure,
Not
sure.
a
Not yeah. I know what
let's
you're
sit
saying.
and right chair.
What is this is asking the author here? What is one book that has greatly influenced your life outside of yours? What is one book that has greatly influenced your life?
Um, I mean, there are so many books that have greatly influenced my life. Um, when I was a kid, I met an author whose name is Barbara Cooney. Barbara Cooney came to my local bookstore, which is why I love local bookstores so much. It's called the Andover Bookstore. Not only was the Andover Bookstore is still this wonderful, welcoming, amazing place that brought authors into our little town and made me feel like I could do anything. They also had snacks, like free snacks, which like for a kid who didn't have where food was not easy to walk into this place with books that people were friendly and they had snacks. It was like they had a
Oh,
fire. Oh God, it was like heaven for me. And when I met Barbara Cooney, whose books I loved and I had really memorized, I mean, I wasn't a reader then, they're picture books. I had memorized them and meeting her really, and her books were such a fixture in my childhood. They're such New England books. And meeting her and I felt it made me feel seen and validated and capable. And it's one of the reasons that I do author visits, virtual and in person, because I know how important it is for kids to meet authors. So that was my first really touch point of meeting an author.
do you have anything? I love that. I'm looking at some of her books right now. What's
Miss
that?
Miss Rumphius.
Okay, that's the top
Yeah.
one that comes up. She's also got Island Boy and a few others there that are
Miss Rumphius is the best. She's also called the Lupine Lady.
okay. Nice.
It's a
What about
beautiful.
I'm curious. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What about is there anything on like the nonfiction side with writing or something that had given you like great tips on how to be a more effective writer, if that makes
Sure. Let's see. Actually, you know what is under here? I have what do I Um,
Huh.
The
Okay.
Magic Words, which is by Cheryl Klein. She was my editor on Braced, writing great books for children and young adults. It's a really great, it's something I go back to a lot. The advice she gives me here for all different reasons. I mean, I have everything flagged in this book. Whenever I'm sort of struggling to get somewhere, I go back to this. It's a great resource. I really recommend it.
Awesome.
It's also a good teaching resource, I think.
Okay. We talked about phone apps earlier. So, what is one phone app that has positively impacted your life?
I mean, the calendar, like that has made a huge difference for me because I can there's like a 15-minute reminder that's set on every one of my things so that I have enough, I forget everything. I mean, I have no executive functioning. So I may need my calendar to tell me where to go, what to do. So that's it. That's
Okay.
what I rely on.
Gotcha. Now, in your neck of the woods, like, what is in New York, or what's the
Mhm.
big convenience store gas stations? What's the
We don't have a lot of gas stations.
or
But we have like convenience stores. We have something called Duane Reed, which
okay.
is the name of two different streets, Duane and Reed streets.
Okay. Okay.
But we actually don't have a Duane Reed around here. Here we have a lot of local pharmacies, and they have been incredibly helpful for me because I'm at the pharmacy all the time. I have a lot of different prescriptions, and I go to Modern Chemist, which is our local pharmacy, which I
Okay.
love.
So the question is, and again, a little bit different for you with you guys probably, don't drive a lot. You're
Yeah.
probably like self-sufficient in your neighborhood there, but if you pop into, you're on the road, you're out to one of your visits, your book launches, whatever it might be, and you stop into a convenience store, gas station, what's like your go-to item? Do you have one?
Ooh, I don't because I don't like ever go to I never have that. But I mean, I'm a seltzer drinker. Like I love seltzer. So seltzer is very high on my list. That would be a huge go-to item for me. I'm trying to think like what if I needed a snack, like we're on a road trip, we stop at a
Uh,
gas station, I want to have a snack, like what's my go-to? I mean, I'm a salt person. I like always gravitate towards salt over sweet. So probably like I mean, if you read Taking Up Space, you'll know like a bag of Doritos. I love
oh, there you go. There you
Doritos.
go. The truth comes out. There you go.
Yeah. And it's a big Doritos are a big part of taking up space. So
Okay.
grab your bag of Doritos, grab your copy of Taking Up Space, and start reading.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Can you recall, and it's a little bit different. I don't know. I'm going to try to frame this for you, but can you recall a job or something that you applied for and you did not get?
Oh my gosh, like I got nothing. I mean, I could recall so many things like that. Like that's my whole life was not getting
True.
things.
True.
So that's why it's like so amazing that I've gotten all these awards because I'm like, it doesn't make sense in my brain sometimes because there were to get here. I failed. I just kept failing. I just like was always tripping. Um, which doesn't make it any easier, by the way. Like the more you do it, the more it doesn't get easier. It just makes you like sad. But I will say there were some things that I didn't get into. So when I applied to graduate school do an MFA in writing, I did not get into Columbia and I did not get into the new school for their MFA program. And my advisor, my mentor who wrote me a recommendation, Susan Shapiro, taught a class at the new school. So she said she would call the head of the program and find out what happened with my application. I was waitlisted.
Mhm.
Um, and she called and the head of the program said that I applied to the wrong program, that I should have applied to the Writing for Children program because I submitted a YA novel. And it hadn't occurred to me to apply to the Writing for Children and Teens program. I wasn't on my radar that I was writing for kids. I just thought I was writing a book. And so I should get an MFA. I mean, I wanted to get an MFA, but I didn't know that I should like really specify. And so not getting that really helped me get on the right track. Because if I had gone to Columbia's MFA program, I would never be here. I
Mm.
just would. I mean, the New Schools Writing for Children program is an amazing program. It changed my life. Um, Having access to editors at big publishing houses,
Yeah.
being with people who are really serious about writing books for kids and really dedicated to it. This was an
Mhm.
incredible experience.
Anything, well, the next question, it's very similar. Anything with your writing, okay, beyond like a favorite failure that you've had, anything with writing where you've maybe had a setback and then had to recover from it?
Yeah, sure. So when I wrote Braced, we went on submission with it, like, which is what agents do when they send it out to editors. And all the editors were back with pretty much the same feedback, which is like, this is a really important book. The feelings are really good. The emotional arc is great, but something's missing. It's not right for me.
Hmm.
And Cheryl wrote back. Cheryl and one other editor wrote back and said, I'd love to do a revision. And when I got on the phone with Cheryl, she said, not in a much nicer way than I'm about to say it, because she's very kind. She said, nothing really happens in this book. Like, there's no plot.
Okay.
And
Ooh.
I was like, what? And she was like something needs to happen. Like, the character has to have a motivation and a want and a interest and events have to happen. It was a lot of feelings. The emotion was an emotional arc. And
Mm-hmm.
so when she called it out like that, and she was basically like, I can't buy this book unless something happens in it and there's a plot. I really had to think about, what does it mean to have a plot? And I really never wrote with plot in mind. Plot was never a strength of mine. It's not why I write books.
Hmm.
But it had to become a strength if I wanted to be a writer and sell books, because you have to learn plot. And so you have to have a plot. It's not interesting without it. But I didn't quite understand that as a writer. And I think that experience of sort of the setback of being told, you're not going to get this thing unless you learn how to do this other thing, made me really learn how to do the other thing in a very specific way. That really has helped me.
So at the time, was that pretty painful to hear?
I mean,
Or
honestly, Cheryl is like such a rock star that being on the phone with her and getting her feedback was just amazing. I mean, she's edited amazing books, all different kinds of books. And she's just such a important fixture in children's book publishing, that just to, get her feedback was, at the time, was like
sure,
amazing.
sure.
It didn't feel bad. It felt, and that's how Cheryl gives feedback. It never feels bad. It feels like, I want to do this.
That's good. So tell us about your writing habits and routines.
Sure.
What's your typical day look like for you? Or is there a typical day, or do you go in seasons?
I go in seasons, not seasons, but I go in, like, I don't write every single day. When I'm writing a book, I write every day. When I'm not writing a book, or when I'm revising a book, I work on it every day. But other than on the weekends, like, I do like a nine, not 9 to 5, but Monday through Friday. And then when I'm not working on a book project, when I'm reading, or then my day looks a little bit different. So it sort of goes in chunks, and I think it's more like waves. When I write, I usually write all day. And when I'm drafting, I do sprints. So I have ADHD, so I need like rewards.
Mhm.
So I'll be like, okay, I'm going to write 1,000 words in an hour. They can be really bad. This is what I think I'm going to write about. And then I can go for a walk around the park. And I try to plan my day that way. Like, I get to have something that I really want. If I accomplish the thing I want to accomplish, and if I don't, and I try to always create a backup plan. So it's like, if I don't accomplish the thing I want to accomplish, then like, that's okay. I can still like walk up, like do something else, so that it doesn't feel like I don't get anything. Like, I don't punish myself if I don't get it. I try really hard to be like nice to myself and be proud of whatever it is I do accomplish, but I try to set the bar high, because I find that I respond to having the bar set high.
Were you able to write? I mean, that's incredible. Like, from you mentioned 9 to 5, so 8 hours of writing with those breaks in between, and
Totally.
But did you have to work your way up to that, or were you able to do that? Your first book, or have you worked your way up to that?
I I was always a really hard, diligent worker, because I had to be. Like, I was good at the slog. I mean, school was really hard for me, so I spent a lot of time. Like, 9 to 5 is like nothing compared to what I used to do to try to get through certain classes. And like, and it's also writing about something I want to write about. Like, I want to write the books that I write. Whereas like learning math, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was like impossible. I would spend hours and days in the library and the stacks trying to like figure things out, going to get extra help. It's kind of like a walk in the park compared to it. I feel like I had that training in
Sure.
some ways.
Yep.
I think that's having undiagnosed ADHD really set me up for every book you write is going to be so hard. You get paid like 1 cent an hour, because it's just, you put in so much, and it's worth every single second of it.
Aside from your like building in breaks and rewarding yourself, what's another great tip that you've picked up for productivity?
Um, I set alarms too. That's another way. So I'll shut my so when I do that hour of writing, like if you want to write 1,000 words in an hour, you have to really like only write. You can't like do anything else. So I'll shut my internet off. It also gives you a break from being on the internet. So, and an hour away from whatever is going to be fine. Now I'm a parent, so and I'm the parent who's in charge of, if something happens at school. So when I do these writing sprints, I tell my husband, like, I'm shutting my phone off. So he knows, like, he's now the parent who's in charge of if the school
Mhm.
calls, which I think is actually really important. You've got to keep your family safe too. And so it also gives me a little bit of accountability. I actually didn't realize that until I just said that out loud, but there's also like, somebody else knows I'm now doing a writing sprint for an hour. I think accountability can help. It can also hurt. So you want to be careful that whoever you're asking to be accountable, to help you be accountable, is somebody who's like, it's okay. If like, you're like, I didn't do anything, I didn't write anything, is like, that's all right, try again.
Huh.
Or
Huh.
whatever it is you need to hear. That's what I need to hear.
Sure,
But
sure.
whatever it is you need to hear, that person can do that for you.
Oh, good. Hey, that's the end of my questions. I'm sorry. One more question.
Okay.
You've got the book release coming up. You've got
Yep.
another book in mind, it sounds like. Are those your biggest goals right now? Or what is your one biggest goal you have?
I'm gonna have like a big goal, which I'm not gonna say publicly yet, but
Okay.
it's there.
Okay.
You have to have a dream. I mean, I am a person who needs to set the bar super high.
Sure.
Everybody's different. Everybody needs different things. Um, but one of the things that I've really been, one of my goals for this year was to sell foreign rights, and we've actually sold a lot of foreign rights. So I started out the year with no foreign rights sold, and now my agent has sold to some countries that have been announced and some that haven't, and it's very exciting. And I'm so happy that foreign publishers are interested in the books. I mean, these are topics that impact kids around the world. So that was a big goal. That has continued to be a big goal, and I'm really excited about the response.
That's awesome. Cool. Very cool. Well, hey, I mean, that's the end of my questions. Is there anything else that we didn't get to
Hidden
that,
Place comes out on May 18th. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. You should ask your local bookstore. You should ask your local library. That actually really helps authors,
awesome.
um, requesting it at your local library. And if you pre-order the book and you send an email with your address to preordergerber@gmail.com. So one word, just like my last name, preorder Gerber. And this is like on social media somewhere too, at gmail.com. And you send me your address, I'll send you a signed book plate and I just got these really cute bookmarks. They're so cute. I don't know if you can see
Awesome.
them.
Oh, yeah,
I'll send you a
absolutely.
bookmark. I'll send you a pin. I got these really cute pins that say, "You're not stuck. You can turn into one of those confident people." And it's so cute.
Love it.
You can
Cool.
wear in your jean jacket.
Awesome. I like that. I like that little extra little. I think that's cool when you kind of get creative and send those little goodies a lot. I mean, just adds to the whole experience. So
Totally.
very cool. Well, Alyson, I know you're a very busy person. You've got some big days coming up. I
Yeah.
appreciate you making the time. I always ask, where's the best place if people want to connect with you? Where do you want where do you want to shoot them? Social media,
Totally.
your website?
So you can go to my website, which is my name, AlysonGerber.com. It's ALYSONGERBER.com. There's a contact page that goes directly to my email. So you could just shoot me an email if you want to be in touch with me that way. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at Alyson Gerber, and on Facebook at Alyson Gerber Books.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, I will let you get going there. I really appreciate your time. It was fascinating hearing about your story and your books. I will definitely try to travel to, for future reference, I need to Amazon is kind of at times looked down upon in terms of the author, so I will try to go to try to find a local bookstore here and pick that up. So, but it
I
looks
love it.
really cool. Looks really cool. So thank you for all you do. I think you gave educational leaders some great ideas that they can use in their own settings, whether it's comprehensive ideas or it's just dealing with students one-on-one. So Really appreciate it. Hey, great job and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good night. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.